Love is love. Love is love.
Eight years ago, when I decided to make the step up from a 600cc Suzuki RF600, sports bikes were just at the end of their life cycle. They were completely going out of fashion, and in their place were the Super Nakeds. Slightly more practical, but every bit as brutal. There were three main ingredients needed to be a proper Super Naked. Number one, everything had to be stripped back. Number two, it had to have as much horsepower as possible. And number three, and this is important, it had to be 1000cc plus beast. See, Super Nakeds, the cream of the naked crop, they were statement bikes. They were the kind of bikes that if you went to a party on a Friday evening in London and someone asked what bike you had, and you would say that you had a 1000cc Super Naked, that would immediately get respect. A lot of my friends had Triumph Street Triples, Kawasaki ER650s, things like that, but I had a Super Naked. I had a 1000cc Triumph Speed Triple. That's the bike I went for after about 3 months of choosing. But the reality is, it took me 1 year to pluck up the courage to actually go out and really take the plunge and buy one of these Super Nakeds because of their reputation. I remember the person that got me into biking, Tony, he said to me, Freddie, there's a difference between a 600cc and a 1000cc bike. The difference is that a 1000cc bike, it will not forgive. You make a mistake, you disrespect it, it will bite your head off. And what we have here is one of the cream of the Super Naked crop, the Aprilia Tuono 1000cc R. Now, it's been 4 years since I last had my Triumph Speed Triple, the beast of a Super Naked, and I sold it for a specific reason. And what I want to find out now, 4 years on, do I still get that same buzz from a Super Naked, and did I make a mistake selling it? In the year 2000, off the back of a couple of good years, Aprilia decided to buy Moto Guzzi. Now that turned out to be a very bad move. After being in a fairly serious financial position for a year or two, Piaggio took full advantage of this, and in the year 2004, Piaggio went out and they bought, for a discounted price, Aprilia. 2 years after they bought Aprilia, they injected 70 million euros into the brand. And the first model to benefit from this cash injection was the Aprilia Tuono. So, out go Aprilia, and they update the Generation 1 Aprilia Tuono with this, the Gen 2 from 2006 to 2010. And this is the model in question. There are three key dates here with the Tuonos. 2002 to 2005 is when the Gen 1 was released. That was based heavily on Aprilia's superbike of the time. It had 127 horsepower and it was a VTwin engine. This, the Generation 2, was a 2006 to 2010 model, still a VTwin engine based on the corresponding superbike of the time, but this was a big step up from the Gen 1 bike. And the final date to remember, if you're looking at one of these, 2011, because that's a huge change. That's when the VTwin changed to a V4 layout. So if you're looking for one of these ultra characterful VTwin superbikes, you're looking at a 2002 to 2010 model. So let's get down to it, what we've got here. Front to back. In fact, actually, let me give you the specs first. 133 horsepower, 185 kilos dry weight, around about 210 kilos wet. It's a VTwin engine. It is almost completely stripped back, apart from, of course, this fairing, which we'll start with. I mean, if we look at the bike in general, it's an Italian, but this is no Panigale. If the Moto Guzzi V7 is a classy Italian sitting in a little village in Tuscany having his cappuccino, then the Panigale is an Italian footballer in an Armani suit. And this is a football hooligan. It's an ultra sitting in the San Siro Stadium, Adidas AstroTurf boots on, socks pulled up over his tracksuit bottoms, adrenaline up to the eyeballs, frothing at the mouth in anticipation for a fight. Forget about any type of Italian elegance here. This is a brute of a bike, at least looks-wise. So, starting from the front, it's got this, and I wouldn't call it pretty, but this kind of almost semi-front fairing with two big lights here. And this, coming around this side, it's actually incredibly practical, because this is where you change the light bulbs, and that is incredibly accessible. If we look at the gauge, again, it's not flamboyant in any way at all. It's just perfectly simply laid out with no flashiness. So you've got the rev counter here, you've got the mileometer here, the odometer I should say, and a few other basics including temperature. Nothing astounding there at all. Now, if we look at the side profile, this is something I really do love on the bike. Aluminium. This is a brushed aluminium frame. It's a work of art here. It stops about here, but at least on the front section, that is beautiful. Very small plastic mini fairing there. This is plastic front fairing. You've still got the original indicators on. Coming round to the back, you've got big exhausts either side. These are a Krapovich, but the originals look fairly similar to this. And then if you look at the back of the bike, you've got this really big, fairly of its time actually. You don't get rear fairings this size anymore. Big plastic fairing, very wide, with, oh God, I don't, okay, Monica, if you stand now, I'll give a demonstration on the pillion comfort. Monica, I may save you here. You may notice, yep, I didn't want to put Monica through it, so I recommended she actually take the Fiat, because, hoi! Oh! Oh! God! Okay, there you go. Oh no. Okay. Look, if you need to go out and quickly pick up some broccoli from the supermarket, which is a 3-second ride away, then fine. But that is, I would class it very close to unusable. But me, I'm 6'1". Do you know, even just sitting on it, it's intimidating. It's, comparing to the street or the speed triple mile bike, it's much longer. It's a big old bike, this. And it feels like it's been carved out and chiseled from a lump of solid metal. It feels just completely solid. There's almost no movement in the suspension at all. Everything about it feels very well put together, actually. It really does. Okay. It's an intimidating thing. Should we get out onto the road? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's go. Do you like just soaking everything in? It's spring here in Tenerife, and all of the hills by May will fill with wildflowers, and I can hear birds singing, sheep in the distance. If you like that, if you like soaking everything in, then this is the worst tool for the job, because I'm half deaf now and it's so savagely aggressive. I spend half my time screaming into my helmet, but the thing that surprises me, I'm screaming into my helmet begging for more. This within 30 seconds has turned me into a total hooligan, trying to overtake everything I can, just gurning away like that, left to right, and just pushing everything as much as I can. I don't know how to just ride this sensibly. I don't know how to just sit up and enjoy what's around me, because I've got my blinkers on, and on a bike like this, everything is focused on the 80-metre road ahead of me. You know, this is 130 horsepower, and yes, the newer bikes may have 170, 200 horsepower, but this is one of the last of the real beasts. Rider aids, ABS for example, came in as a legal requirement to the EU or to Europe in 2013. This has absolutely nothing. This is 130 horsepower with a tyre that fat, with nothing to protect you from your own inability to ride it properly. And I completely forgot to do this. Have a listen to this, because, and I don't know if it sounds good anymore because I'm pretty much deaf, but I think it should sound pretty special. I mean, it sounds amazing. It's literally destroys the peace and tranquility. I actually almost feel embarrassed turning it on because people are looking out their windows. But it sounds amazing. Riding position, this is something I should say. In fact, let me take this off. I don't want to scratch the tank. Compared to my Triumph Speed Triple, have a look at this for a riding position. This is more like a superbike riding position. My leg's actually quite far back, and I'm 6'1". It's not ridiculously tall, but my leg's really at an angle here. After 30 minutes of riding, I was in a moderate amount of pain, actually, and that's something I didn't get on my Triumph Speed Triple of the exact same era. So if we're comparing, just briefly, this and the Speed Triple, definitely on comfort, the Speed Triple will take it. On the subject of my Triumph Speed Triple that I used to own, I had it for 4 years. I had a 2007 model. It was 1050cc with 130 horsepower, and it was 189 kilos. This is 133 horsepower, so around 3 horsepower more. It's 4 horsepower lighter, and it also is a 1000cc bike. They are eye-openingly similar motorcycles. This one feels noticeably longer. It's got a noticeably more cramped riding position. The Triumph's triple engine is characterful, but this VTwin engine is genuinely such a characterful engine that you could buy this bike just because you love the engine so much. I'm no engine connoisseur, honestly. My knowledge of anything mechanical is quite close to zero, but when you're on a super sports bike with a VTwin engine, it's that initial, almost Harley-like rumble you get when you start to fire it up. You're going along the motorway 70 miles an hour, something like that, and you just push it a bit, and it's got that deep rumble that a Harley would give you, and then it just fires off into the distance. It's a really unique thing that I haven't really experienced before. So engine-wise, I think to get a super sports bike with a VTwin, it's a very special thing, and I don't know if it will ever be done again. So that is a huge selling point. And of course, 2011, they moved over to V4. So what we've got here really is something very special in a very specific moment of time for Aprilia. I mean, this is a 2008 bike, but I promise you, if you go out and you buy this, you will not be disappointed. You won't go out, buy it, ride it and think, oh, but now maybe I need the updated model. The way it's been screwed together, the power delivery, the brakes, the handling, all of the fit and finish, 14 years after this 2008 model was made. It's stunning. I can't imagine ever wanting any more. And the power itself, 130 horsepower with no rider aids, I promise you, you would never ever need more than that. Bear in mind that as I'm reviewing this bike, I'm lucky enough to have the luxury of reviewing it in biking heaven, the exact place that bikes like this were made for. And in fact, it may well have been test ridden here back in 2002 on launch. In Tenerife, they like two types of bikes. They like super nakeds and they like super sports bikes. Nothing else at all. That's because these are the tools for the job. You're never more than an hour and a quarter away from anywhere in Tenerife. You can go for 20 minutes without seeing anyone. The roads are racetrack smooth and there's bend after bend. So a weapon like this is tailor-made for somewhere like here. But if you get it into the city, for example, you realise the turning circle is about the worst I have ever experienced in my life. And if I were any shorter than 5'8", I don't think I'd fancy myself if I have to park this on an incline or something like that. It is, after riding it for a bit, it's still an intimidating beast. It is something that you really, really deep down feel like you do not want to disrespect a bike like this. It's a beast of a machine. But, if we're looking just purely at what this bike's made for, the handling, the dynamism, 14 years on, is still a superb motorcycle. Now, Monica's just said she'll go in the back if there's a promise of lemonade, because she's just seen a cafe back there. So Monica's about to give this her best shot, but like I always do when I get a bike on test, and it fits so well. QUADLOCK setup, first thing I do, that is the phone case that effectively connects your phone to your bike in the easiest possible way. So what I've got here is the Handlebar Mount Pro, solid aluminium. This is a new piece there that just, I hope you can see the quality of that. It just fits so well. I've then got this extension lever on here to put it right into the middle. I actually have a wireless charger in my Bonneville, but no need to wire it up for a day. Like that, on, and then to take it off, as easy as that. One of the single best, biggest game-changing bits of kit for a motorcycle I've ever had in my life. I really do mean it. It's changed the way I do any type of motorcycle travel. Monica, how are you feeling?
Scared.
To the lemonade store. Let's have a look at the Tuono as a used proposition. So if we focus specifically on this, the Generation 2 from 2006 to 2010, going on to MCN, which is always my go-to place, user or owner reviews of this bike, they give it an overall score of 4.8 out of 5. That's just about the highest I've ever heard. And reliability ratings, they give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And going onto the different forums, it's got an extremely good reputation for reliability, with one but. And that's the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, in 2004, Piaggio bought Aprilia. And Piaggio also owned Moto Guzzi. And in the last Moto Guzzi V7 video I did, I was inundated with owners of Moto Guzzi saying that the dealer network and the after-sales teams are a disgrace. So I decided to go onto the forums and have a look at what it's like for this, the Aprilia. It's extremely hit and miss. You need to have a look and see if you've got a good, reliable, reputable Aprilia dealer near you who can supply you with parts and or repair the bikes, because I've heard a lot of stories about people having to wait up to 2 months for parts for these. So just make sure you know you can get the parts for these, because Piaggio, they don't have the finest reputation for after-sales quality. And if we look at used prices, so, if you look at the Aprilia from 2006, you can pick one up for around about £4,000. Have a look at the Triumph Speed Triple 2006, and you can get one for around about £3,400. Kawasaki Z1000, £4,000. And finally, the Ducati Monster 1000, £5,200. So you can see that regardless of where these super nakeds started price range, they all seem to drop down to that £4,000 mark. Apart from one, that Ducati Monster seems to be slightly more appealing than the rest, but everything else in the market, if you're looking at 2006 model, they seem to be around about £4,000. And being 2006, we haven't yet got to that desirability level where they started appreciating in value. So you don't need to worry too much for the next few years. Prices on these aren't going anywhere. They're right up, probably bottomed out at about £4,000. What would I choose? Same era bikes. Triumph Speed Triple that I owned, or this, the Tuono 1000R. They're both still in 2022 superb bikes. The shorter wheelbase on the Triumph Speed Triple means that it feels more flickable. However, the longer wheelbase on the Tuono means that it feels more planted. The looks of the Triumph, the more stripped back, more classic looks with the twin circular chrome front headlamps, that is more my style of bike. I like the more subdued, more understated looks. This, well, it may be striking and it may be aggressive, but in my eyes, a beauty of a bike, it isn't. So probably for that alone, and the fact that the Triumph Speed Triple, it's not quite so cramped. So long journeys on the Triumph are possible. I rode the Triumph from London to Croatia and had no issues at all. I think I would be struggling, genuinely struggling after 2 hours on this bike if I was trying to do any touring. So, and also actually the exhaust, I don't think you put panniers over it. So for me personally, I'd go with the Speed Triple. But now we get on to super nakeds in general. How do I feel about them 4 years after having ridden my last one? They are just so ultra aggressive. You cannot help but ride in a way that suits the bike. I was going along the motorway. I don't know if I should admit this or not. I was doing 160 kilometers an hour and I wasn't even thinking about it. And I class myself as a slow rider, but they just encourage that manic, like animal-like riding. They turn you into a complete animal. So I like that about it, but for me personally now, I genuinely do appreciate the calmer, more relaxed type of riding where you get to enjoy the scenery. So for me now, it's not quite my kind of bike, but if you're on the market for one of these and you live somewhere like Tenerife, which is riding heaven, where every Saturday and Sunday, all of the sports bike riders, all of the super naked riders meet out and they use this as their own personal racetrack, then this is a superb tool for the job.
Love is love. Love is love. I didn't know.
very bike is currently for sale in Tenerife for €5,000. So if you live on the island and you are looking for a real tool to enjoy these stunning roads, I'll include a link of the exact classified where you can find this bike in the written description of the video. This Tuono, along with its key rivals, it really is the last of the madness. It was at a time when bikes weren't restrained by any rider aids. They were undiluted machines, when all that mattered was the most amount of horsepower you could get from the 1000cc plus engine on a completely stripped back, bare bones motorcycle. And we will never, ever see biking like it again, because now with all of the rider aids that are predominantly legal requirements, and going further than that with different types of rider modes, traction controls, it means that this just can never legally exist again. So if the 1990s was the era of the superbike, then the noughties was the era of the brutal super nakeds. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. What, in your mind, was the ultimate super naked of the noughties? Please do leave your comments. Monica and I both absolutely love reading them. Thank you so much for coming along with us today. I'm about to head off that way, enjoy my last couple of hours with this bike, and we'll see you in the next one.